Oh wait, hang on. I think the mic got disconnected. Everybody?
No, nothing else besides this.
Well, now, I should say that I have had, I thought you meant comments about what was in it. I had, no, but I've had 3 different people tell me the reason they passed it around.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the May Cypresswood Community Association meeting. Welcome to all the presidents who attended or are attending. Mr. Secretary, will you please take the roll?
Sure. Cullo Patio. Here. Cypress Pond. Here. Eagle Pond. Enclave.
Here.
Fairway Patio.
Here.
Garden Patio.
Here.
Golf Villas. Greenfield Village.
Here.
Meadows.
Here.
Oak Grove.
Here.
Palmacia.
Here.
Plantations.
Here.
Sand Hill Lane. Villas on the Green.
Here.
You had your quorum.
Thank you very much. Next slide, please, Samantha. I need a motion and a second for tonight's meeting agenda, please. Mr. Brett's made a motion. Is there a second? Mr. Shire. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. I also need a motion and approval for the March 15th meeting minutes. Anybody want to make such a motion? Mr. Pemberton has made such a motion. Mr. Brett has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you. Before we get to the resident comments, I just kind of want to take a poll. With the new CDC guidelines, the basic guideline is if you're vaccinated, mask are at your discretion. If you're not vaccinated, then they strongly recommend that you are masked. I think that's probably the prudent policy for this meeting and going forward in this building. Do I have any comments on that, or anybody have any strong objections that we need to consider? Okay, we'll move forward. We do have some resident comments tonight. The first one is Tim Weiss. Mr. Weiss, can you please?
Well, I thought it was going to be afterwards.
No, it's first.
Well, you might have my answers before I get up there and talk.
This is.
Okay,
You have to, Mr. Weiss, you have to come up to the X, please, and address the board, please.
Okay. I thought she told me I was going to be afterwards.
No, sir. Resident. Careful.
I might be answering it.
Okay. Well, make your comment. Ask your question.
I just want to know if we're going to learn the books on the golf course and the pub, restaurant for the last quarter of last year and the first quarter of this year.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Just make that note, please. The next one is Robert Dodd.
I have no questions.
Thank you. And the final one that signed up is Mr. Don Tassam.
Good evening. First of all, I want to mention that a number of neighbors of ours and neighbors in local communities like ours have been posting things on the internet about street walking solicitation. And some of the stories are pretty, I think, nerve-wracking to hear the details of. And what's happening is people are getting into communities, they're street walking along, and they're offering attractive, let's call them attractive prices to cut down your trees, trim branches off the trees, cut lawns, pull weeds, do a lot of things like that. And you're going to be winding up, if you hire any of these people, very sad after the event is over with. So I'm hoping that, first of all, the residents who are listening, and maybe some on the, if this is being on the air, then some of you listening on the air will think about if someone is knocking on your door or taking pictures of your house and then starts to solicit to do work for your house, tell them that we don't allow soliciting in our community and call the sheriff's department and have them notified that there is a solicitor doing something that's against the rules of our community. That would help a lot. One of the stories that I can tell you very quickly, just recently, was where a gun was pulled out by a resident, and that could have led to a real disaster. So these are, and the reason the gun was pulled out was because the solicitor wouldn't leave when requested to. But, you know, guns are just something we don't want to have people playing with in our community or any community close by. Another thing that I want, being asked a question?
Stop the clock, please.
Okay. Do you have a question, Mr. President? Yeah. Are you saying you're opposed to residents in here having firearms to protect themselves should they be needed?
No, I'm not saying that, nor did I ever imply it. If that answers your question, then I have a license to carry a firearm myself, and I protect my family the same way I'm assuming you protect yours. I have in front of me the Green Information Manual, which was given to all the presidents and all the vice presidents. I complimented Martha for the work she did. I know she was at least a co-sponsor of getting this put together. And I asked her tonight whether or not she had had any questions raised with her about information in here, and she said, no, she hasn't. And I was shocked. What it tells me is that either you're not reading it or you're not caring about things that are said in here that aren't taking place. Like, as an example, every resident shall have on their vehicle a Cypresswood decal to identify the vehicle. That's not being followed. And if you read this, you'll see it's part of the Cypresswood Community Association rules. And so what you should do as presidents and vice presidents, and I'm a big advocate of the decal, to alert your people to the fact that they should have one if they don't. And there'll be more coming up on the decal in the near future, which will give them even more reason to have one. So I hope that you'll read this, get a lot of good information out of it, and if you have questions about things that are different now than what this says, call someone to find out. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That concludes the resident comment section. Mr. Tucker with the Treasury Advisory Committee. Next slide. Thank you. It's good that you could read my mind, Savannah, after all this time. It's scary.
Thank you, Bob. For some time, the TAC committee has been interested in better ways to help the presidents and thereby help the residents understand the financial statements, conditions, and so forth of the community. For that reason, I asked for 3 individuals from the TAC committee and others to band together and build a tool that will help all of us, maybe in a quick snapshot view of the financials of our community. Those individuals are Scott Shara, Robert Dodd, and Kevin Seward. They have prepared a document or several documents to show you tonight, and hopefully it'll be a good tool to use each quarter to talk about the financials of Cypresswood. Please, Scott, would you come make your presentation?
I assume she's got that. You have the blue slide?
This one?
Yep, that's it. This is the CCA budget overview, and it combines both the 2021 budget with the spending through first quarter of 2021 at March 31st. At the top, you'll see that this is our total assessments that we gather for the year for 2021 budget purposes. And then the budget really falls into two categories. Part of it goes for operational and part of it goes for amenities. What this page talks to is the operational side of it. The first 4 lines inside the box, landscape, traffic control, general administrative and facilities utilities, and then also the drainage. Those 4 committees have their budget listed in the first column for 2021. That's the total budget for 2021. The second column with the red numbers will show you what was paid out in the first quarter. And then the last column gives you the remaining budget for the year 2021. Below that are the designated amounts that went into the reserve accounts for each of the committees. And we're budgeted in 2021 with the amounts in the first column, paid in the second column, and then have the remaining budget to come in this year in that last column. This totals out for the total 2021 operational budget of $436,982 for the year. We've paid toward the budget $90,000, and we have $346,000 roughly left to go. That's a snapshot of the budget and what's been paid. Below that in blue are the reserve account balances. So those amounts will show you through March 31st, 2021, what has been set aside in designated reserve accounts for front entrance, traffic control, general reserves, drainage reserves, road reserves, and yay, we made a little bit of interest on our money, so that's banked as well in a reserve account. Those are our reserve accounts. They're obviously being set aside for future use. Couple of notes at the bottom. The pump is, I believe, in process of being replaced right now on the 15th tee. That has a variable cost that's been approved by the CCA board, and so that'll come out of our drainage reserves fund, and that'll get spoken to, I'm sure, later this meeting. Last thing, the boulevard paving is scheduled to be done this year. I don't know the status of that. I'm sure we'll find out. We've got road reserves of $290,000. So this page takes a look at the operational side of our budget, what we're paying, what we're reserving, and if you want to go to, do you want to ask questions? If there's any questions now, yes, sir.
The sign out front, I understood that there was an insurance payment for the damage to that was incurred. Do we have that figure?
Ben Tucker? Do we know?
I never saw the check yet.
It was $10,000, I believe. That was the limit of the insurance for that.
Have we received those monies yet?
I would have to check that, but I believe we have. I believe we have received those monies.
Okay, is that money also in that reserve account allocated for the front entrance?
I don't think that it is from what I saw.
No,
What do you
it's
know?
not.
It's not. So
it was after that anyway.
It was after.
That anyway.
Yeah.
It's after March 31st when we received the check, I believe.
Glad you mentioned it. This is going to be prepared quarterly, so we'll be on the watch for that. And the next time we meet and discuss this, we'll make sure we answer that then. Yes.
Is the interest reserves, is that a cumulative number or is that a current number?
It's cumulative.
So then people, so I'm asking that because I don't want people to surprise if it only goes up a couple dollars the next quarter and wonder where the 17,000 came from over a long period of time. When you say cumulative, you're not talking about this year, right?
Correct. Next slide. Yes, sir, back in the corner.
So I can't see that figure, so we're talking 17,000 that's in that reserve fund for that front entrance?
16,106.
Okay, 16,106 plus 10,000, that's 26,106. Is what's going to happen out there requiring that amount of money just for a front entrance sign? $26,000?
Can I comment on that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've been working, I don't know, I guess he's not here tonight, but Fred has been working on that. And Is he here? Okay. Well, the money has been received, and he had interviewed different people on getting prices to repair the sign. We finally came up with a decision to go ahead and basically, the section that's been destroyed, cut it off and have it removed. And that's going to be about $6,000. So there'll be a balance left over. When the road work is being done, we may have to do some modifications later on, because the point of the island in front of the sign now, that will come back about 25 feet. So we're trying to minimize the amount of money being spent on the sign right now until such time as the road work is being done and we can see exactly what we have. So that's why that money is being held in reserve.
Scott, the front entrance improvement reserve, that $16,000 was the payment from the state when they took the right-of-way.
Yes.
And that's been there for 2 years.
3 years.
3 years.
Did you get that?
Yeah, but this is gonna lead into something else. I went over to Royal Oaks and talked to the people over there, and they were paid and have already received their money for what the state took. And with that money, they were able to put that wall up in front for privacy and to lessen road noise and so on. Are we considering anything like that, any sort of wall? Or do we want the public, when they go by to see our magnificent golf course, what's the thinking there?
Well, the community association owns the area just to the east and just to the west of the boulevard. So that was the area, that block that we were paid for in the right of way.
When you say just to, what distance are we talking either side?
Mark, it's not very far on either side.
Yeah, it's the area that's going to be impacted is rather limited. If you notice, the fence is intact, so they haven't done anything with the fence, nor do they plan to do anything with the majority of the fence. We're looking at where the turn lanes are going to be. Now, the community association hired the law firm, which law firm?
Yeah, I don't know how many.
Downtown Winter Haven to negotiate on our behalf for the property that was being taken. And their recommendation was for the impact that we were going to incur, that the $16,000 was a reasonable amount. And so we accepted that.
This board accepted that. The board accepted that.
Yeah, the board did. I'm saying the board did. When I say we, I'm referring to the board.
And that's in the minutes somewhere?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, go ahead. Thank you, sir.
Yep, slide 2, please. Second page will give us again the same information at the top with regard to budget. Inside the box, we break out the various amenities items that were initially scheduled into our budget at the start of this year for 2021. Again, same formatting with a list of items: advertising, golf course building improvements, loan servicing, operational expenses for amenities, pool expense, property liability, property tax, tree trimming, and an unassigned amount, which is sort of call it that, a small reserve. Again, totals budgeted, the total paid, and the balance remain. You can see across the bottom. There was a surplus after 2020 of $4,000 roughly, so that sits over in the budget for amenities as well. One thing we included on here was relative to loan servicing, since that's such a large percent of budget. We put the total outstanding balance for both loans on this, which we'll do each quarter. It's also right off of the financial statements. Both of these documents use what is on the detailed financial statements that are produced by the CAM at the end of March. So this all lines up with that. It's just formatted, if you will, to say a 10,000-foot view, so you can get a summary view of what our budgets look like for the year, how we're doing with regard to spending to it. And I'm sure as we move along, if we can improve this, if we can add to it, based on what the board may want to see or get from it, we can do that as well. Any questions on this part?
Well, not that part. I have a question on before that. Is the 16,000 that you said was approved for that money, you said the board approved that? Who would the board be? Is that the group presidents?
Yes.
When was that done?
It was 2 or 3 years ago. 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know the exact date off the top of my head.
Okay, that wasn't something that was recent.
No. When they were doing the acquisition phase of the right-of-way is when we went ahead.
Question from the audience, do you want to take it? Peppermint?
That is, well, board, your call.
When you ask them.
There's a question from the audience?
Yes.
By all means. Okay.
I was just going to ask you to hold the microphone a little closer.
Okay.
You're permitted. There's one, this gentleman in the middle.
When
Yes.
will that information be available to the presidents and vice presidents of the individual HOAs?
It was.
This report was part of your email to the
Right, it's been sent
CCA
out to
board.
the vice, so if you did not get it, make sure we have your correct email address, because it was sent out to all of us.
Sorry, I can't.
I did not get it.
Then then we need to make sure your email, John, is correct, because it did go out to all, and I do have you on the list, I just don't know if we'll verify your email address. So say, yes, it's gone out, it will go out, just make sure we
Yeah.
get your email address.
Very good. No other questions? Ben, do you need this back or Bob?
Okay, thank you. Landscape Committee, Mr. Wilson? Next slide, please, Sam. Hello, Fred.
Do me a favor. What I'm passing out is what the Landscape Committee has approved and recommended that we do for the front sign. And while these photographs are not photographs, it's a rendering, are being passed around, somebody may have to share. I don't know if there's enough there. Just to update you, we have been reimbursed by the insurance company for about $8,500 and some change. So we have that, it's in the budget. The additional $1,500 will be up to the $10,000 will be decided based upon what it takes to re-landscape it and what it takes to get the electrical hookup back to where it was before, so that the lights are now working, because none of it is working right now. I want to thank Mark for working with me with his construction background as he's evaluated each of the quotes from the sign companies, and he's uncovered some opportunities for us to save some money. He reached out to a resource that he does business with and the Cypresswood community does business with on a regular basis, and we've been able to reduce the cost to replace the sign, the back of the sign, just as you see on there, for about $5,000, which is $3,500 less than what we had anticipated from the insurance company. And the reason we want to go with that look is the main reason is this. Number one, we want it back operating, but it doesn't need to be back with the big fantail on the back side of it. So what we're looking at is to replace it with this configuration. The landscape committee's looked at it and says, yes, that's going to work for us. There, of course, will be some additional landscaping added to that. But the biggest thing is this. Won't be until about the end of 2023 that we'll have any idea as to what the front entrance of this community is going to look like. So at this point, why spend any more money than necessary when we can bring it back up to where it is attractive? It still represents the community in an excellent way, but we don't have to spend the money to do it. And we might actually come back with the ability to max out that $10,000 and come back with a pretty good looking sign. But remember, this is a work in progress at this point. There are some things that are still unknown We are still working within the guidelines of the $10,000 that's coming from the insurance company. So we know everything will be within the guidelines, so it will fall within that. So I just wanted the presidents to take a look at that and just know that that's what the landscape committee is recommending. And at this point, with 2023, until we know what's going on, we think this is the most economical and best looking solution that we can recommend for the community. And I'm opening it up for questions. I want to be sure you know that we're judiciously looking at trying to save as much money as possible on this, so that there's no overages and we go over and have to look someplace else. That's it, Bob. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
Traffic control, Mr. Reese? Watch your step.
Thank you, Bob. At tonight's traffic committee meeting, we discussed one of the items that Mr. Tassin brought up. There was a solicitor that came in apparently with a service truck, pest control company. We don't know. The best we can tell, there were probably two individuals, one that was doing the actual service, and the other one finished his job early and decided to walk around knocking on doors, inviting people to use their services. I had an individual at my home as well. Traffic control, I think Mr. Tassin is one of the ones that has taken it upon himself to oversee the traffic control article in the highlights. But this evening's meeting, we voted as a committee, and we need your help as presidents to alert your homeowners that effective immediately, we will begin to require any vendor that is coming to the gate unannounced to be called in. Now, let me clarify. We already grant 30-day passes to the usual lawn maintenance companies. That's still going to be okay. We're not going to require your homeowner to call when their yard is supposed to be mowed. We are also not going to require a homeowner to call that Duke Energy is coming in to Duke Energy, county vehicles, city vehicles, trash trucks, et cetera, they are fine. There doesn't need to be anyone called in. If, however, you have a spray company, since that was the perpetrator, that comes in once a quarter, they likely are not getting a 30-day pass. So don't be surprised if someone is turned away and instructed that you have to have your homeowner call the shack and give permission for this vehicle, person, whatever, to come in. Apparently, based on traffic control experience, we're getting more and more solicitors. It is a violation of our CCNA covenants. I would encourage all of you and all of the residents that are watching that if you have such an instance, if someone comes up and solicits, call the non-emergency number for the Sheriff's Department. Let them know where you are, that you have a solicitor in your neighborhood. Describe the individual and ask that they come and remove that person. That is all within our rights, being in a restricted community that does not permit solicitation.
Just clarify that this is an existing policy that's being suspended.
Yes, it's basically, if you remember, right now the policy, and it has pretty much always been, that anyone coming to the non-resident lane after 10 p.m. would have to be called in. Okay? What we're asking to do is we're going to expand that to try to cut down on these daytime solicitors. Okay, so even, nothing's changing from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. or 7 a.m., whatever it was. John? Yes, sir.
If you have lawn service that's coming in, sometimes the contract reads as needed, sometimes it's weekly, monthly, and you're 1,300 miles away up north or out west in your St. Louis, Missouri home, how are you supposed to get a hold of anybody to say that so-and-so is coming in on a given date when you don't even know the date for sure? Because in the past, that person has had this blanket thing that you're talking about. How do we know which ones are gonna fall under the yes, they can come in, or the no, they can't?
Those that will be allowed to come in will have the 30-day pass on their windshield. Should they not, and you are 3,000 miles away, then that particular time, your yard probably won't get mowed. And someone, whether it's the president, whether it's a neighbor, I would encourage your residents to speak with their neighbor and say, oh, hey, can you call the shack and let them know my lawn service is coming in? Most lawn services, John, are going to be in there, especially during the summer months, at least once a week. So it shouldn't be that big of a deal right now. When we get to be winter, we obviously are going to reevaluate this and see if it cuts down on all this. Could it be an across-the-board change? It very easily could be. Again, we don't know, and some of you have the neighborhood, whatever, ring, whatever. My wife showed me one from something in Southeast Winter Haven. Appeared to be a solicitor, came up, rang the doorbell, the ring doorbell, no answer, and what's he doing? He takes his hand and runs it across the top of the door frame, checking to see if there was a key, is what it looked like to me. Okay? So, like I say, that is going to go into effect immediately. We're trying to save the hide of our traffic control people who do a good job. But like we brought up at our committee meeting tonight, if someone says, I am legitimately going to XYZ address to spray their yard, and they're in a company truck, and there's two people, and they go in and they do their thing, there is nothing, absolutely nothing we can do to stop one of them from walking up and down the street with those neighbors to solicit. Okay? No way we can do it. What we can and what we talked about doing is if that is, and I'm going to throw them out, I don't know if that's, Massey, but let's say Massey did that, and we catch them soliciting. We may come back to you as board president and say, we would like to bar Massey services for 30, 45 days to get our point across that we can't put up with that. So that will be something that if this doesn't tone it down, we may come back to you and say, may we have your permission to place this into action?
I have a couple of questions.
Rick,
Yes.
Robert was first.
and I'm very sympathetic. I appreciate what you're trying to do. I have a Ferguson Landscaping who does my yard, another yard, been around here forever. Two people in a truck, well identified, and they come every other month. I have no idea when they're coming.
Okay.
So there's no way I can give you advance written permission to allow them access to my property. Because calling ahead of time is, I don't know when they're coming.
If they, and that's a very good question, and for those of you who didn't hear it, what if you got the company that is coming in every 60 days?
That's basically what I...
If they are just spraying your yard every 60 days,
Yeah, my neighbors.
okay? If they are spraying anywhere else though in the development, there's a strong possibility that they will already have that 30-day pass renewed every 30 days. So I would think they would be on some sort of rotation that they're doing maybe 3 or 4. Yeah. But notify, call the traffic control center, the gatehouse, and give them your address and let them know that Ferguson is permitted in the event that they come and you're not there, you can't call in.
Well, and I will tell you, also several months ago, had a pest control company come in that was not from this area, obviously, and they were soliciting services and walking up and down the street, and I immediately said, sir, we do not allow soliciting in this neighborhood, and they took off. So those are pretty easy to identify.
Yeah, I did that Thursday too, and then he proceeded to walk down the street to a few other neighbors' houses because I went back inside. But yeah, that's where we, I think as a community, pick up the phone and call the non-emergency number and do it. Let me, hold on a second, let me get this one.
My question was going to be, if someone pulls up to the gate, why can't we have a list of residents and contact numbers like a lot of gated communities do? And you make the phone call and says, Mr. Reese, Ferguson's here to come spray your yard. Are they allowed to come in? Yes, you can let them in.
we could do that. That would require an additional employee to be on duty.
I mean, that's just,
Because there are a ton, it's a lot of traffic for, a commercial vehicle coming in and out. So you need to change the whole concept of what traffic control is to do that. But that is a possibility if we want to spend all of doing that. Mrs. Hallis with
Yes.
I just have 2 points. The first one was with regards to the gentleman over there. When we know that there's a certain lawn company coming every single week in the summer months, I don't know about other people, other residents, but my lawn people, Angel Extremes Landscaping, they come every week even in the winter months. So in the summer months, is there anything where people at the gate can start writing a list of all these different lawn services so that you know which ones come in during the summer months, and then if they start coming to houses just once every 2 weeks and they haven't got their 30-day pass yet and nobody's called, at least you know that they're legitimate because they've always came every single week during the summer.
I'm going to try to repeat some of that. So the question pertains to the lawn companies that are going to be in here every week during the summer, but maybe not every week during the winter.
Correct.
Fair enough? Okay. The 30-day passes are something that when someone pulls up and they are nearing the end of their pass, the gate will go ahead at that point in time and reissue for another 30 days. So as long as that lawn company is primarily what we're speaking of, as long as they are in here at some point in that 30-day cycle, they should be able to get a new pass without anybody calling. Okay? That was one of the things that we had to come up with a way that we weren't going to burden the staff at the shack, and we weren't going to burden the homeowners having to call every time you get your yard moved. So that's what we've come up with, was a 30-day pass. Does that answer your question?
That answers the first part of my
Okay.
question. The second part is, obviously, you're talking about companies coming in and soliciting business. But we also have a lot of traffic coming in through the gate claiming to be visiting people's houses. And I know for a fact they're not visiting, they're actually going out and soliciting for different things. So, to me, from now on, what needs to come across is it needs to be developed like most communities are. If people are coming to visit, people need to call the guard shack first and let them know that they're coming, and if they don't get it. Because I've had numerous friends who used to come and visit me, and they used to show their ID. This was pre-COVID. Now, they don't have to say anything. The gate just goes up and in they come.
Okay. With regard to the calling, I think that's what we had said early on, that regardless of time of day, if you're expecting a relative, a visitor, they need to be called in to the traffic control center in order to be allowed entry. Okay. At that same time, the residents, if you've got someone that's coming that's a relative and they're going to be here for 3 days or 7 days, you need to let the shack know that, so that that permit or that pass can be assigned so that your relative, your guest, is not going to be burdened with pulling their ID out every time they come through.
That's the problem. They're not even asking for ID anymore.
Okay, what I'm hearing is that they are. I would love to hear what time of day, so that, again, we have human beings that are trying to staff that gate. If they are not doing it properly and it's a particular shift, I need to know that so that we can address that shift and take care of it.
I'm not saying that they're not doing a good job. They're doing a good job. But even from my point of view, I come in and obviously I've got a clicker to open the gate.
Right.
The amount of people that don't have a clicker, but the people on the shed are just holding the buzzer open because they can see the decal, and they're just going through, but they don't necessarily have a clicker.
Well, the decal that's golden. If you have that, unfortunately, a lot of people have a decal, but they didn't want to spend the money for a clicker.
And on the one hand, you're told you gotta wait for the bar to come down and then press it before it goes up. But if you've got somebody and you're waiting for the bar to go down, and you've got somebody working the guard shack, and they're holding the clicker to keep it up, then you're wasting time in the line as well.
Agreed.
But at the same time, you're frightened to move through just in case they take their finger off the clicker and it comes back down
Agreed.
to the car. So there needs to be a balance somewhere.
Totally agree.
Martha was next.
President Martha, we'll go this way.
In my HOA, we have limited maintenance. Our CAM takes care of it. So will it be appropriate for our CAM to call the guard shack and say when somebody's coming? Because we may well have a roofer coming to fix a skylight and I don't know and the owner doesn't know. The CAM is arranging that.
Send me an email if you would and give me all the particulars as to the CAM so that I can forward that to our gate supervisor and he can post that.
You see where the...
I do,
okay.
yes.
Okay.
So it's not the individual homeowner, it's the CAM taking care of the outside.
Very likely.
Okay, no problem.
I wanted to speak to the supposedly people being let in and not getting their driver's license scanned.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in a car accident, so I have a rent-a-car. But I know everybody at the guard shack. I've been living here long enough. So they don't ask me to pull my driver's license out every time I pull up in a rent-a-car because I know all the guards. They just say, hey, how's it going, Jason? Say, have a good... You know what I mean? So there's probably a lot of people in that line as owners are driving through and clicking their clicker to go through the resident gate that are seeing that the people are just, the guards are just people at the traffic control are waving people through because they know the individual, they know they live here, they're either in a rent-a-car or they're in somebody else's car, or, you know, it's not just random people, I think, that they don't know that they're letting through, they know they live here.
Right. And I think that's a very fair observation that you're in a rental car, doesn't have a sticker, but yet Tony or Jeff at the gate know you. Why would they want to have you pull your ID? That's common courtesy and yes. Okay.
Who's next? Yeah, I don't want to jump in.
Yeah, a lot of people just come to the gate and say, I'm going to the golf course.
Right.
Yes, and I mean, there's nothing, I think last month we talked about the temporary restraining orders. We can't enforce those, folks, so if any of your residents want us to do that, then I'm sorry, we don't do that. The same thing. I mean, whoever you don't want to get in here could say, I'm going to the restaurant. I'm going to the golf course. Once they go through the gate, other than having a photo ID scanned, we have no recourse to know where they're going. So, who's next? Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, so I'm assuming that somebody like Massey or something, they probably would get a 30-day pass all the time because I got about 4 or 5 services I pay yearly.
Yes.
And they come in, but I always call the guard shack if someone new is coming in and tell them who it is and my name and everything. And I've never had any problem with that.
Thank you for doing that. You are probably one of the minorities that will do that.
I
we
wanna
need
do
more
that.
majorities to be calling in.
Yeah, I try to do that because these people have these times set up, and if they can't get in, they'll go, and it might take you another 2 or 3
Sure.
weeks to get rescheduled again.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Okay, Tom, you had something, Brett?
Oh, it was answered.
Okay. All right. Please let your residents know we are not trying to be stinkers up there. We're trying to cut down on a problem that has gotten a little bit worse as we go along. Anything else? Thank you all. Oh, yes.
Is there going to be a list put out of those services that are available so that we don't have to call if it's on the list?
You mean like a preferred vendor list?
Yeah, would that be on the
Or an approved
website
vendor
someplace
list?
that you could
Well,
say,
the only problem with that, the only
my
problem,
lawn service is on the list?
The only problem with that, Walt, is that if you approve Massey and I don't, and he walks on my door, then he's soliciting. So that's where it gets a little bit.
And I guess my biggest concern is if your refrigerator goes out and you've got to have someone come in and fix it. That's a hopefully once in a lifetime thing. Those are the ones you want to call the gate and say, hey, I'm expecting someone to fix my refrigerator. Your lawn services, your spraying companies, those that are pretty much repeat performers, they should, I would guess, be covered with that 30-day pass that somebody has already gotten.
But we don't know who that is. Only the guard shack knows that.
The guard shack will have that, but whoever pulls up to do your lawn, they will more than likely have that sitting on their dash.
And when does this start?
We'd like to do it immediately, unless you want me to do June 1st.
We gotta let our constituents know.
Yeah, June, yeah.
June 1st, fair?
Yeah.
Okay,
That'd be good.
we're good with that. Yes, sir.
I recently had a very good solar company install total solar on our house.
Okay.
I did not have to have them let in. And I don't think they've done anybody else in my neighborhood. So I wonder how they got in.
I do too.
I just had a quick one. Do we have to have a conversation about fast food or food delivery, Domino's Pizza? We don't have to have a conversation about that, do we?
As far
As far as them coming into the community.
they should be ID'd every time they come in.
Okay.
That's.
Okay.
But there again, if it's the same driver for Pizza Hut, and Tony has scanned him 48 different times, and he recognizes him, he may wave him through.
Okay.
Okay? We try to hire common sense at the gate.
I get it.
I mean, if you order pizza, you could make a second phone call to the guard shack and tell them, I just ordered pizza from Pizza Hut.
That's true. And that
I
may
mean,
not be a bad idea. Yeah, pull a slice.
It's not right.
It's the best.
Next slide, please, Savannah. Road and drainage, Mr. Shiro.
Good evening. My name's Bill Shira, and we're going to talk about roads and drainage. First, let's start with roads. We're preparing to begin a good-sized paving project. Mark Klutner and I have met with the 3 contractors that we'd selected to receive bids from. We've received one of those bids. The other 2, I believe we met with them about 10 days ago. We prompted the other 2 today to get their bids into us. We want to get on their schedules. We don't know the lead time on schedules, so I can't tell you when we think they begin, but I can pretty much guarantee you that by the end of the day, by the end of this week, we should have those bids. At that point in time, we'll have more information on that. With regard to the 3 associations that are participating in this, we will be having the contractor that is selected come back out and work with the leads in each of those associations to be sure that we've covered all the base points on that, and they will be connected to that contractor to work with them when they do the project in their neighborhoods. If I was going to give you a guess on this, I would think that the process would probably start somewhere near mid-June. That's a bit of a guess. It is probably about a 6-day, 7-day project, Mark.
Oh, 6 or 7 days, you mean all of it?
Yeah.
Well, probably 2 weeks.
Okay, probably 2 weeks to
2
get
weeks,
it
yeah.
done, and certainly.
Maybe a little bit more for
Right.
striping at the end.
Yes, after they're finished, we will have everything restriped. We will be widening the white stripe on the boulevard. It is currently at 3 feet. We are going to be moving it out to 4 feet. We know that adequately accommodates most of the golf cart type vehicles that are here. Right now, it's pretty much a tight squeeze. We've got plenty of the room on the road to do that, and personally, I believe it will encourage people to stay in one line and not try to pass anybody. Our roads are no passing roads. Are there any questions? John?
Bill, I know this won't be popular with some folks, but I would like to propose that we do not redo the speed humps and bumps. All they do is punish decent folks that do observe speed limits. And I've stood out there and watched people come flying up to those things 35 miles an hour, hop over them, take back off 35, 40 miles an hour. They are not a deterrent to someone that's intent on driving like that, believe me. All they do is harass folks that observe speed limits. I spoke to a contractor who owns an expensive sporty vehicle. His vehicle was actually damaged by the speed bump at the guard shack. So that bump that's there, if it's gonna stay, should become a hump and not as severe. Folks like me that drive 1.5 ton vehicles, if you slow down to 15 miles an hour, you're gonna look at internal injuries for Pete's sakes because of those things. I can only go over that thing at 10 miles an hour without having everything in the vehicle go haywire.
Well, I'm not prepared to address the speed humps. I can tell you there's one speed bump. That is the one at the exit point. That's the one that you're talking about that's a bad bump.
That damaged a contractor's vehicle.
That speed bump is there for the purpose of recording license plates as they exit. When we did not have that, you couldn't get the photography on that. Rick and Bob, am I correct in making that statement?
Yes.
I think to have that removed and not do that, that's not something that I can address here at this part as part of road and drainage. With regard to the speed humps, I'd look to the presidents to see if you want to revisit that issue. That was quite a thing that we've gone through to do that. And after they were added, the information I've been given was that it has helped with the high-speed traffic because people have been clocked at close to 60 miles an hour going down the boulevard without those humps there. With them there, yeah, you can speed, but you really got to work hard at it. And the areas, and that would also apply to areas like Greenfield Road, which there's one there at between the Meadows neighborhood and the Greenfield neighborhood. There have been some added in the back part of the community, and I think it's going to take a separate discussion to address that. I think we could get that discussion handled, but I don't think that anyone's prepared to address that tonight. And this is to you, the presidents. It's up to you. They're your roads. What do you want to do? Bob?
What I'm gonna do?
Well, tell us yeah.
I mean, John, you can make a motion on whatever you'd like. If you want to make a motion, if you get a support for it.
I would rather the presidents give it some thought, talk to folks, that they represent, and get an overall opinion about it. I've given the overall opinion of the people in the garden patio and how they feel about it, and the fact they feel they're being punished because of other bad drivers. I feel the same way. I don't speed out there.
I think, John, I think that applies to most of us, and I think we have adequate time to address that before we get into this paving, and we'll put it to. I think, Rick.
Thinking about John's statement concerning the outgoing speed hump, the only other thing that, and I'm just thinking this off the top of my head, there is a gate operator there that still works. I mean, you could do away with speed hump and that gate would be closed all the time and go up when each vehicle approached it.
I'm good with that.
I don't,
You'll have people's expensive cars damaged.
By the hump.
Yeah.
They went by the gate.
Right. So.
The gate used to get plowed all the time.
Mark?
I mean, if that was the will of the board, we could do away with it. When they come in to do the paving, they're going to peel that up anyway.
Don't put it
because
back.
there's milling everywhere. And we could try that if the board so desired. And they can always come back and put a hump back in at a later date if we say this is not working. So we can always make those we can tell them we want to hold off on whatever the board wants to do, because they can always come back and add them later.
We have a comment by Mr. Howell.
Mike?
Several years ago, the board decided to put that hump at the guard shack. There were two problems existing at the time. People flying through the stop sign and the early crash of cars coming in turning left.
Yeah, that was the other issue.
The other problem that we had was people between the stop sign and where that hump is going out, they were passing us on the right and cutting between, you only got from the stop sign to the hump going right. They would actually come to the stop sign, pull up the side of the car, and race ahead of you to get past the guard shack.
Wait at the light.
And yeah, we nearly took out the guard shack. So, and that happened to me personally. So the board decided that it was better to bring the traffic as close to a stop at that guard shack on the way out. And that was before we were thinking about photograph and license plates. As to the issue of the boulevard and the humps, they're inconvenient, but for the welfare of the community at large, it's better for some of us, even if we feel inconvenienced, to be inconvenienced for the safety of us as a group. You take them humps out of there, and that boulevard from Oak Grove to the guard shack's going to be 60 miles an hour. Now, we've been through this before, and we talked about it. I was on the board for 6 years. We had this conversation several years. The duty of the board is to do, everything, every decision that the board makes is not necessarily going to be considered convenient for the community as a whole. Sometimes we have to be willing, for the safety of the most of us, to just be inconvenienced.
Mrs. Hallis?
I just want to say that I agree with him, because another point that we have to think about as well is that the school buses actually stop at that stop sign and pick the kids up. So if you're going to have people that are going to try and shoot across others, then it's going to be a danger to the welfare of the children in this community, and they should be paramount. Their safety should be paramount. So I think they need to stay.
I have a question.
Jason?
Since we're redoing that boulevard, I see the bus make a U-turn every morning, and all they do is tear up the.
Yeah, they do a back and forth kind of
just
thing.
like, is there a way to deter that from happening? Because that's not good for the edge of the road or our median that they're tearing up because they're cutting halfway through to make a turnaround.
Trucks in the neighborhood as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just.
There's, it's the width of the lanes and then the length of the school bus. I mean, it's a tough turn for them.
Yeah.
The only way we really could fix that for them is to widen the road. I don't think we're gonna do that.
Well, I see, some school bus picks people up they turn left coming into the gate, pick them up on Greenfield, and there's another bus that comes in and makes the U-turn. Why can't we as a community say that's where the bus stop's gonna have to be there, and they have to drive all the way down Greenfield to come out? That's a school board issue.
We can't dictate bus stops. That's up to the school board.
Yeah, but it's not a safe place for them to make a U-turn in that situation.
It could certainly be brought to the transportation department of the school board. I mean, there's attention and see what.
Because I'll get held.
I don't know what we
I'm
have.
just speaking for myself because I get held up because they have to make like a 6-point turn if they don't run over half the median because he doesn't.
That's why that big rock is there.
No, this is the first turnaround.
We could
When you first come in, they turn around at the first turnaround. Is when they turn around.
NGT station.
But we can't do anything. We have a resident that works right in.
Well, we have a resident that is responsible for maintenance on the school buses. He happens to live right behind me, Aaron McKenzie. Was on our board for quite a while. I'll speak to Aaron about it, and he may have. I don't know that he'd have a definition, but he'll give us a point of contact on that. So we'll take it under advisement, and we'll look into that.
Because they pick the kids up at the stop sign. I mean, they make a U-turn and pick them
I
up
think
at the stop sign on the way out. So it's not like.
Well, aren't there different school systems coming in?
Yeah.
There's three.
You have Lake Wales Charter, you have
Throughout the development.
Lake and Christian, you've got Polk County.
Bill, can you add any asphalt to that golf course side of the road for them to make the turn?
I'm not. Yes, I think you could. I don't believe there's irrigation there or anything like that. That could be done. That would take a bit of a study, but if we could find a better way to deal with it than doing that, I think that'd be better for us. Martha?
Before we take out all the humps, we also need to realize that the discussion for putting them in was about 3 to 4 years ago when some were added. And since that point in time, we have more children than we did then. So if just statistically, if we want to take them out, we really need to think about it. It was added for safety reasons.
One of the things, Mark,
Are you just referring to the speed hump at the stop, at the exit? Or are you referring to the speed humps on the
There's a
boulevard?
speed bump at the exit that should be dealt with in some way.
Okay.
And the speed humps, like I say, they're just an annoyance to people that obey the law.
I agree with you.
I agree. Excuse me, I'm going to make a comment and take a position on this. I've been part of this board since the early 90s. The complaints that we had over the decades about speeding, I mean, it was every meeting. After the humps went in and after we began to employ the county in here to police for us, I'm not hearing it at all like I used to. I mean, yeah, I live in a spot where I can see traffic come up and down the boulevard. I see some people hitting it and going 45, but I really don't see that super high-speed stuff that we used to get. And as much as I don't like to say it, because I don't like the speed humps at all, they actually work. Or they seem to work, because again, we're not hearing the complaints that we used to hear. That's not me to make a decision that we do it or don't do it. I just give you that as information. The next part, can we move on away from that? Are there any other comments? Thank you. So we'll be looking forward to some new roads, initial indications from the initial quotes we've gotten. I can't draw to the fact that we're going to be near, over, or under what we have. We only have one bid in from the 3 contractors. Next thing I want to talk about briefly, do I have a slide now? Good. No, I want this slide. This is with regard to drainage. On hole number 15, we are replacing the pump which relieves the properties to the east side of the boulevard and the south side of Greenfield Road on the south part of Greenfield Road. That pumping system's been in there for 45 years, Mark?
About 40 years. Yeah.
About 40 years. The type of pump that is in there, we can no longer find replacement parts for. It's worn out, it's tired, it's time for it to be retired. You've heard us talk about this for probably 15 years. We knew this day was coming. We have finally hit the point where, thanks to the approval from this board to spend some money, we have ordered and received parts to build a new pumping system. Over here are there's 6 pieces, which this is the concrete box structure. These are the pipes that lead to the pond. The pump pieces themselves have been constructed, and we're glad they're finished and ready, because information we're getting from other sides of things, the materials supply side of almost everything, which includes automobiles and refrigerators, we're in for some pretty tough times over the next year. But all the pieces are ready. This is the welling system where we'll bring the water in. The equipment is on site at this time. This afternoon they started taking out the China berry plants that grow along where we're installing them. The pumps are being moved to the north approximately 100 feet. It's a dual system with dual pumps, so that we're not constantly being paralyzed by the fear that the pump won't work. We'll have 2 pumps in place to handle any storm event brought to us. And I know Mr. Klutenauer and Mr. Shade will sleep better during a storm. We think the timeline on this project, I think we're about 2 weeks to get this part installed, and probably another week or 10 days to get the electrical moved.
I'd say a month.
A month?
Yeah,
Okay.
a month.
To get the electrical done and to get the pump set in place, the system tested, and then at that point in time we'll decommission the old pump and remove it. This triggers a number of things, but it's an interruption in our golf program. We will be restricting the flow of golf carts from 14 green to 15T. That cart traffic is going to have to go out, back out onto Greenfield, take it all the way around to the front of the community at the 16th hole, the par 3, and drive back up the par 5 and play the hole from there. It's summertime. Our traffic activity on the course is certainly much lower, so it's not going to be as big an inconvenience as it would have been a month ago. But again, we think this project will be completed within a month. We do not have a final on all the numbers. We've got the estimate on all these materials and the estimates for all the work to be done, but until they've finished digging in the ground and getting everything done, we don't know if there's any surprises hiding in there for us. We have some money that was in the original ask to cover those things. Are there any questions on that? John?
Bill, when did we get authorization to buy the pumps? Was it a year and a half ago?
No, I believe that was in the fall.
January?
November.
It wasn't January of 2000?
We did not have the we did not have the final quotes at that time. It couldn't have been. It was in the fall, and I believe it was the November meeting where we did that ask. Anyone else?
Phil, so,
Yeah.
I guess 2 questions. So it's fair to assume that whatever it costs in excess of the amount that's held in the reserve now will be taken from general reserve?
That's the source that we have, yes.
Which means at that point there is 0 in the drainage reserve.
That would be in the drainage reserve for the pump, yes. The drainage reserve for the pump is forecasted to the end of the year to accumulate to $138,000.
If it's completely funded. When it's funded at the end of the year, it'll be 100. Is that the number, Bill? 138?
138, yeah.
So we're done. Okay, I'm confused.
When we did the ask with some room in it, I believe we asked for 220, and we would like to believe we're going to get it done for 200, but again, there could be some problems there.
Right, so 200, there's roughly 130, 40 in the reserve.
Call it 130 at this point.
Which means you're going to take it down to, you're going to end up pulling the difference out of general reserves.
Yes.
Which means there's, except for what little bit is going to be contributed during the last half of the year, there'll be very little to any reserve left for drainage.
That is correct. That is correct. But we do, but drainage does have a budget for drainage maintenance. Okay? And that budget has not been impacted by hardly anything so far. We probably, and last year during the budget process, we reduced that account substantially in order to get a budget number that we could live with.
Well, and my point is that drainage is obviously, you got your work cut out for you to project down the road what the real need for, because we're kind of sitting there naked, if you would. If we have another big pump failure, some other big issue, we'll have very little sitting in reserves.
That's correct.
That's correct.
You almost got to start with drainage at ground zero.
Right.
And work back.
We'll, as we go through the budget process, we'll address that. The next step in getting all this updated will be our pump that is on the west side of the community. The replacement of that pump is different than this one. It's easily accessible. The restoration charges aren't anything like they are for this. And I mean, I wouldn't want to tag a number to it, but it would certainly be half of what this one is making. Mark?
Yeah, I agree. We don't have to relocate it. We have access to it. We have a good location where the pumps are now. There's enough space there that there's a single pump, but it's adequate to put a duplex station in there.
Yeah, and we've got a good base that we put in there when we updated that maybe 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah,
My only point is, let's assume it cost $100,000 and it went out. You no longer have the reserves. You don't have the reserves in drainage, and you don't have the reserves in the general fund. You got a problem.
Yep.
In a worst case scenario.
Yes.
So my point to the board is, y'all need to be seriously thinking about that, given hurricane seasons and everything that's going on.
Okay, I've got a number of hands. Let me, this lady was first. Yes, ma'am?
Just wondering, do you not have a contract with somebody who's agreed to put this in for a certain amount so that you know what you're looking at?
We do have a contract for a certain amount. Part of that contract is that you identify that there are things that might require special attention. And let me just make one up, but there are multiples of these. If in fact during this process we get any major rain events, the ability of the contractor to work in the dirt and in the ground is impacted, and so they have to begin to do a process which is called demucking. It's what you saw them do all along the road out here, where they had all the white pipes in the ground and they have to suck all the water out. Now, if you said to the contractor, I want a hard bid that you can't change, then he's going to put that in the bid and we're going to pay for it even if it didn't get used. So, in fact, what things like that are the variables that can add on to it. In addition to that, when you get down in the dirt is when you begin to understand what is in there, and there can be some surprises in there. And contractors won't take a contract, if a contractor has to bid it to protect himself, he's going to bid it high. And then you're stuck with it if you don't need it. Mark, no, let me have.
Yeah, in conversations with the contractor, we kind of estimated what we thought he would need. Now, there is a certain amount of what Bill said, either demucking or dewatering included. As he starts to excavate it, and we look at what the soil type is, and we look at what kind of, what we have groundwater intrusion coming in, we may or may not need some of that. And if that's the case, then he deletes that item. But again, as Bill said, we could get in there and that particular berm along number 15, some parts of it are much more stable than other parts of it. We almost had one section of that at one time. You could walk on top of it when the water in the canal got very high, and it felt like a waterbed. The ground was just moving like this, and we had to come in immediately and stabilize it very rapidly. So until they start excavating, we're not 100% sure. But we did try to include the things we thought they would have so that we presented the board with an accurate number.
Mr. McCoy was next.
Dave?
Yeah, so you do have contingency in that bid for extras that come on, like a change order.
We do have some contingency.
Okay, so if you don't have those, then that like whatever you have, I think when we looked at it before, it was about $20,000 or something like that.
That's correct. I mean, we have our fingers crossed because the road work on Dundee Road has done us a favor. In the process of reconstructing that culvert system, that from the north to the south side, they went ahead and put sheet piling in and stopped the flow coming down the canal. So we were originally thinking, well, we're going to have to think about how to manage this water, but they have done it for us. So the canal is low as I've ever seen it, which, we eliminated pumping cost associated with that, which would have been a substantial number. So we're keeping our fingers crossed right now.
John?
In answer to the timeline question, at the November 16th meeting, it was stated that the cost of stormwater pumps from the supplier they were trying to deal with at the time was over the top, and that was a quote. And they stated they were looking for a different contractor. At the January 18th meeting, we were given all the details on the pumps that were found. They were creel pumps, all the specifications for the pumps were given to us. It was at that meeting that we approved the financing to make this happen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? John?
Yeah, the reason I asked that question, I'm glad you brought that out, John. The reason I asked that question earlier is because all through the Green Book it says January of 2020 is when you got the authorization to buy it.
And it was January 2021. Yeah.
That's a typo.
And I thought, and John, that's what I thought
That's
you
a
were
typo.
referring to was January a year ago.
It was a typo.
Hugh?
Just a question about another pump. What about the one on 7?
That's a golf course item. That's
pays for it?
not part.
Who pays for it?
Well, it's maintenance on the golf course. We do. We, the community. That's not in the drainage budget. That'll come out of golf operations. And I think the pump on number 7 will be discussed.
Go ahead.
Shall I go on it? Well, yeah, and Mark knows the most about it. I'd like everybody to look out that window and see that water flowing out there. The pumps, the golf course does get watered. It gets watered extensively, but we did lose about 10 days ago our pump that's located at the restroom facility on number 7. It's not the pump that went out, it's the drive that went, the drive shaft
Well,
system.
it's not actually the drive shaft, but
Okay.
yeah, there's a column down in there with a shaft going up, and it spins the impellers and pushes the water up that column. That column itself broke, okay? Right down where, at the bottom of these pumps, there's like propellers, but of course in a pump they're called impellers. But there's not one of them. There's multiple stages. So there'll be like 5 or 6 propellers all lined up, each one in its own little bowl assembly. And the amount is dependent upon how much water and how much water you need and what pressure you're pushing against. So right down there at where those propellers are connected, it broke right there. And so they brought a crane in to lift the entire thing out to try to do an easy fix. And they realized this bowl assembly, what we call in the industry the bowl assembly, the propellers down at the bottom, they have to be rebuilt. And they're in the process of trying to do that. Now normally, in the crazy world we live in now, it's weeks to get this stuff back. Normally, I've replaced pumps, many pumps over the years. 3 or 4 days you can get another pump. Not now. So the contractor that pulled the pump out, he called me and said, look I'm having a hard time. He's now taking the pump to the 3rd vendor, and tomorrow morning he's supposed to call me and give me the date when he can get it back in. We're trying to get it back in like within a week. We're trying very hard to get that accomplished. But we're at the mercy of the suppliers.
You have any idea what this is going to cost? It's not cheap. Do you have any idea what this is going to cost?
I don't yet. I will tomorrow.
The golf course is getting water from the pump.
All right. Any other questions for me? Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the Amenities Committee. Dr. Palmer.
Savannah, I think you have a slide. There we go. This is as of the end of April, so it's the first quarter plus a month. What we have here is financial information for for 2020 and 21. You can compare the two. Now, I want to say that we didn't close down until around the middle of March last year. So far, these are relatively comparable numbers. As we move forward, the 2020 number will look drastically different. Okay, our revenue is up almost 100,000, not quite. 498 compared to 400,000. Our expenses are also up, 325,840 versus 276. Many of those expenses were planned. That's not necessarily new information. The net at the bottom as of the end of April, this is for year to date, at the end of April, we have a net of 170,585 in 2021 and 137,20 in 2020. So you can see that we are doing better. And one might say that for one quarter, we're doing considerably better. Does anybody have a question on this before I go to the next slide? Okay, next slide, please. All right, this is 2021, just this year. The amenities assessment. This is what was budgeted and approved back in the fall for this year, 520,000. 502, I'm sorry. I read that wrong. As of March 15th, which was our last board meeting, the board approved and spent $226,048. Unallocated funds to date are $275,951. The May operational request is $70,000. Now I want to make a comment about request. We're not asking for new money. Yeah, go to the next slide, please. There we go. This was our budget for this year. This is not asking for new money. This is what's already been approved. We're basically ratifying the fact that we're spending it. At the top there in that first column is the amount approved, and that's the $254,798 to date. The amount spent in all of these various categories, which I was asked about at the last meeting, they include operational reserve, which is maintenance and repairs, utilities and insurance, agronomics, which was grouped together, fertilizer, herbicide, things like that, 4,000, clubhouse pool supplies and improvements, golf course building improvements. That one was kind of big because during this time period, isn't that the new roof on the maintenance barn? That's not the cart barn, that's the maintenance barn.
Yeah.
So that one number does stand out, but there's a reason it should not be repeating the next quarter. The cart pass improvement and other amenities are, we didn't plan for that. We did have cart path improvement, that was $1,800. We have advertising, we have that social media included. We had debt service on our notes, which of course we expect as part of our budget. That's $182,848. That's approved for the year. That's what that first column is, approved for the year. And then what's approved for open projects. The second column is what we've spent so far for each one of those items.
So just a point of clarification, this is the amount that's been approved by the board so far this year.
So far this year.
Not the budget for the year.
No, not the budget for the year. That's approved for the year.
So far.
So far.
2 meetings we've had.
And we've had 2 meetings. The second column is what's been spent. And the third column is an over-under variance. Now, in this meeting, I hate to say I'm asking for money because it's not new money. It's what's already been approved. It was what we discussed. It's part of the budget. But the ask for operational reserve request is $70,000. Yes. And a board member should have you should have had these well before the meeting.
So these other items are all, over budget, we're looking at.
No, that's what I just said. The amount here has been approved. All we're doing, this money's been spent against the budget on the other page that was already approved.
I understand that. I'm just going by this last column here where you say that you're over budget or it's over budget and that. And I guess my question is, it looks like we've got about $52,000 left on that third column over there that hasn't been spent at the bottom. Isn't that it?
Bottom right.
Bottom right? We've got about $52,000, just rough.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So when that runs out, where does other money come
Go
from?
to the previous slide, please, Savannah.
Is that 502 in there?
This is a summary of what
This
you
one.
asked for. This is what's left over today, before this is approved.
Okay.
So that is just the detail that the board asked for to be presented as part of this presentation. That money's already been spent. It's already part of the budget. It's already part of this.
And that's where the rest of the money is coming from, the 502 for the rest of the year?
The remaining out of this number. So when assuming it's approved, then we'll have $205,000 unallocated for the remainder of the year.
So Bob, Scott and I talked about this today. We agree, at least I agree, and he agrees, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Kevin, but I'm pretty sure he agrees. This is confusing, just to be honest with you. And so you can go ahead and, it's not that it just doesn't present itself well. And when you look at certain columns, go back to the next column, or go one more. Not back, forward, right there. That's not the one I was looking at, the last column. I'm sorry, the one that's got the deep, keep going.
That one.
Yeah. You're only showing part of the revenue for the year, but yet you're showing what they've spent, and it creates problems. So my point is, us on the TAC committee to help work on these other reports are going to try to address this and get this to where it reads better, and it's a lot simpler because it's an important component of all the issues that we deal with. And if you'll give us another couple of weeks, by the time we get to the next board meeting, I promise you we will have this resolved, okay? Because every time I look at it, I go, God, that doesn't look right to me.
Need another column.
We need several more columns.
I'll go back to my spot. What we're bringing at the last meeting, I was asked pointedly by one or two HOA presidents about exactly what are we spending money on. And so what we did is we went back to the CAM's books, line by line, that shows when checks were written, and this is what money was spent on. So I'm answering that question. The problem is to try and put it, as Robert said, in a fashion. We are not over budget for the year. I'm primarily trying to show exactly where money was spent to answer questions from the previous meeting.
We just think it's better if you had the total budget for the year, probably,
Yes.
and then show what you paid so far and what's left. Kind of like we did on the other.
And
report.
we basically
show
turned
part of the budget, but that you've shown all of the year-to-date expenses, that's where it gets messed.
Right. And that's
We turned this information over to them, and they are still working on the presentation. And it's our hopes that at the next meeting, you will see a similar document to the one you saw just a few minutes ago.
And Martha, to point out that this document is produced by the CAM from the financial statements, not from the amenities group.
Right, this is from the CAM.
And we're not saying,
Who's paying?
it's not accurate, we're just saying it just needs to be.
It's confusing and, you know, it's not about.
It does.
It needs clarity.
It does, we agree. And at the same time, though, I was challenged to present what was spent and exactly where. Well, that's line by line. And that's what you got. You got a line by line budget expense list.
And John?
Just sort of a general question. At this point in the year, is the golf course meeting its expenses and/or turning a profit or not? Where are we with that?
We just showed that.
I can't see from here.
Okay, so, and you didn't get the email, so, okay, you're good. So if you do go back.
Go back one slide. One more. There you go.
Right. The golf course's revenues exceeded expenses by $170,000 this year compared to $130,000 last year.
Golf course and restaurant?
That's the LLC.
I know, but when you say golf course.
It's all, yes, sir,
Okay.
you're right. It's all of the amenities that the LLC is financial control over.
Everything that brings in money and everything that costs us money is included in that net.
So that's not broken down any further?
Sure. It was on,
It is
in the TAC report.
in our TAC committee report that we talked with the Treasurer's Advisory Committee, yes.
Scott, did you have a comment?
I did. On the 2021 revenue number that's up there, January through April, there was a special that ran in November and December that would pick up memberships that may have paid last year that really normally might be a monthly revenue this year.
Sure.
Is that brought forward into that number?
No.
Okay. So you've even got more revenue that we're not realizing in the quarter. If you were to not run that special and put
Correct.
If it was done in that, done in that fashion, yes, sir. Okay, so now a couple more questions.
Well, I got a question. You know, we're talking about, you know, the pump on number 7 and it's going to be down. You know, we spent over $1.5 million on this golf course. And I'm seeing, and other people are saying, the tees that were replaced are dirt. The fairways are dry. Is it because of this pump that why we're having this problem?
That part I don't address.
Yeah,
I can't
it's
answer.
partially due to that.
Let me do you want the mic?
No, I'm loud enough anyway. I can talk about anything. Yeah, no, it's not. It is not all the water. There is some agronomic issues that we've been dealing with. We've had 3 consultants in here since August dealing with these issues. We finally, I think, have figured out the action plan where we're going to intensify the herbicide and fertilizer program going forward. So we just got that a week and a half ago.
And the other thing is the fairways, you know, they're dry, and they're not cutting the grass. Can we cut them higher than what they're cutting right now?
They're not really growing, so I mean, all we're doing is knocking down the signal grass. We're not going to address the signal grass until we start to get some water, and we're not really watering fairways.
When it comes to mowers, though, you might want to mention that we did just receive a new mower.
Yeah, we got the new great mowers. That will help. That will help blowing a hydraulic line and destroying one of our $50,000 drains.
But you say the fairways aren't growing, and that's why they're so.
Yeah, we're scheduled by the first week in June to do a full fairway fertilization application, which will help. But we're gonna wait until we get a little bit more information to make sure that we can actually water it in before we put fertilizer down there that's hot and it burns them even worse.
And
Dave, you hit the ball one way right now. Ball goes a mile.
That's true. That's true. Of course, I
And
get
it-
350 yards anyway.
We're kind of coming to the end of our dry season. For those of you that don't live here all the time, the wet season is around the corner. This is when things look the driest. This is also when a pump went out simultaneously, and simultaneously our grass on the golf course is changing from rye to Bermuda, and that does not look pretty when that change happens.
And frankly, all of our talent is being evaluated every single day. There is eyeballs on the performance of our talent in the golf course side of business.
We have one question back here.
I know it's the dry season, but how come when you go to the likes of Willowbrook, Country Club of Winter Haven, aka Lake Region, or even Lake Bess, their grounds and Lake Ashton are much better than what these ones are here, and you can't just blame it on the pump. There's a problem with the talent of running this golf course, maintenance-wise. They don't know what they're doing, that's clear. They need to be stripped from their duties, and you need to get a whole new team involved because they do not know what they're doing.
We are,
Good
like I
luck.
said, we are evaluating the talent. on a daily
And you
basis.
can't keep leaving it from 1 week to the next week to the next week because property prices are gonna go down. It's not gonna affect me because I'm not on the golf course. As far as I'm concerned, John Wood can go ahead and start building houses on the golf course because then our HOA will go down to an even balance. Because right now, it is dismal out there. Absolutely dismal.
John?
Can you speak to why the greens, I'm sorry, not the greens, but the area around the greens and certain areas on the course are being so badly scalloped? Was that the problem with the old mower, and now that problem's gonna go away with a new mower? There are places that were just about mowed to the dirt, and right next to it, the grass would be 1.5 inches high.
Well, when we did the improvement, we went out 30 feet. There's a definitive line there where you can see where the new grass was installed and where the...
I'm talking about scalloping from mowing. I know what I'm talking about here.
I would
I've
have
played
to-
courses for 55 years.
I would have to see what you're looking at to know. I'm not...
11 and 12. Both of those are badly scalloped from the mowing.
Where?
I already told you, around the greens, along near some of the sand traps.
Bob, I think what he's talking about is if you go around the peripherals of the green and certain places where it gets high and humped,
right,
it appears that they've been scalped.
Okay.
And then they're being cut too close, which is, I agree with you, it's a real problem.
Okay, well, we can certainly address that.
One more question in the audience.
No, what they're referring to is if you look on your way out at number 12 on the right-hand side, and there's 2 sets of mowers that are scalping, and the center mower isn't mowing. It's just a minor adjustment on the game mowers that are not mowing properly, and it's around every green.
So is it in, I'm asking because I was out there today and I walked every one of them, and the ones that are done, is it outside of the fringe area? It's in the...
No, it's a fringe area. It's around the green, around the traps.
Not the rough.
Yeah, okay, all right. Well, can we...
And around the teeth. I mean, it's obvious there's 3 mowers on that mower, and the 2 on the outsides are scalping brown, and the center ones are green.
Okay.
I mean, it's simple to see.
Okay. I'm not going to disagree with it.
Also, you're saying that the grass isn't growing. Well, how come I'm getting my lawn cut every week because the grass is growing? What makes the grass on the golf course different to everybody else's in the development?
Good grass.
It's different grass, and that's...
Not really. Grass is grass.
No.
I wish it was.
No.
Yeah, really.
Grass is expensive.
They can't find. But they try
Can we go to the next slide?
Sure.
Whoops, no, go back one.
Number 11.
Go back one.
By the ladies.
I'm sorry, forward. There.
There we go.
So do we need a motion on this?
We do.
I believe we do.
For that.
Bill?
Bill, do you have a motion?
Yes,
I'll make a motion that the board approves and ratifies the expenses that are listed there, the $70,000. That comes from the amenities committee for board approval. And we need to remember, this was mentioned early in this, that these monies are coming from a budget that was previously approved.
I second it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Yes, Mr. Jason Hall. Okay. Opposed? I'm sorry. Okay.
Next slide.
No, we're done. You're done.
We're done.
All right, under new business, next month starts our annual budget presentations. It was suggested by the Treasury Advisory Committee that we do them in groupings to help us get a better picture of the final assessment earlier in the year. So that can be evaluated by the Treasury Advisory Committee. So I'm asking that G&A's, the miscellaneous and the accounting, the CAM, the lawyer, all that stuff, just so for clarifications. Traffic Committee and Road and Drainage get their budgets prepared for the June meeting. And then in July, Landscape and Amenities will go. Unless somebody has an objection to that schedule, that is kind of what it was. Mr. Klutner?
Yeah, I'd like to see road and drainage go into July. We got a lot going on in June.
Can Landscape be ready to go in June, Mr. Wilson? Can Landscape be ready, Mark? You think?
I think landscape should be able to do that.
No, I mean, can Landscape go here? Because okay. All right, then we'll flip those if that because of some timing.
We just have a ton going on.
No, I get it. Yes, sir?
No, I don't want to ask a question about this. Before we convene, I'd like to ask a question about the website, community website. Can I do that
He's
after?
got a motion though.
Yeah, after this.
No, the motion's been approved for that. So do we have I don't think we need a motion for the schedule. I think that's within my purview. So unless somebody has an objection to the schedule, I'll welcome that comment. Okay, moving on.
I have an inclusion.
An inclusion.
An inclusion. Some presidents, some people that vote on these rarely come into the pub and don't ever play golf. So I might be suggesting when it comes up to my portion of the budget that we take a couple of field trips, that the presidents that are actually voting on things go out and look at and see the maintenance building and the bathrooms and where the pumps are. We can schedule a field trip around the golf course or into the pub at your convenience. The amenities committee took several field trips in the process of making improvements, and I just think that some of you might be more informed if you actually go out and see what's happening. So I'm going to suggest field trips.
Good idea.
Good idea.
Got to get permission slips though. Okay, so Mr. Who had the question? Another new business, Mr. McWay?
Yeah, I wanted to just ask about the Cypress Community Association website. I understand that there's some changes that were made on there, but there's a lot of work to do on that yet.
Yes.
Old information, kind of when will that be done?
It should be done momentarily. Savannah has volunteered her time to help build a more user-friendly site, and then she has finals. So we've been a little bit delayed, and we're not going to blame her for that. That is obviously, we should have that within the next day or so, a couple days.
I did finish up 90% of it today. Most of that's left is putting on like the governing documents on this section. I have all the financials up there, but I've got to put those on. Some of the information is a little old because I had to go off of what the old website had. But I've been trying to talk to some of the presidents and people in charge. Most of it I've gotten done part of it was with Eagle Pond. The Garrison people were reluctant,
yeah, we're working through it.
Like,
yeah.
I'll try
So
contacting you guys.
I will make the note that the before we went in this transition period with the new website, the old website, it's only as good as the information that the individual HOAs provide to us. Savannah and I, because we're basically going to be the webmaster apparently, and mostly Savannah, I hope. But so if when we get it up, we'll send out a link so you can review it. Just make sure that and talk to your boards and what do you want on there. Oak Grove took the prerogative of building their own, and they put a link to that on there. Some others, the Bills on the Green people have sent the information, and it will once it's able to be updated, we will update that as well. But again, look at your information and make sure it's what you want on there. I will also send out the public and private lists again. Remember, the public list is the one that are points of information for community members. Some people put nothing on there. So when somebody calls and asks, how do I get a hold of plantations, there may be nothing there for us to tell them. They do not provide information. Some people give personal phone numbers out. I think there needs to be something in between that, probably. The neighborhood section of that website belongs to that neighborhood. You can put anything you want in there, and you can put nothing in there. It's completely up there. There is no mandate from the chair to do that. Any questions on that? Any other new business? Oh, do we have a question, Mr. Weiss?
Might be the traffic control, I don't know. And I hate to bring it up to the board, but the traffic control, Jeff had a great piece in there in the last newsletter. I thought it was excellent. They talked about animals being on a leash and not running leashes. Who enforces that?
The enforcement of the
Animals on leashes.
leash would be the Polk County Sheriff's Office or the individual HOA if they have rules in place that say that. And remember, without a fining mechanism, and I believe there's only one that has a fining mechanism for violations, and I believe it's you guys. I believe it's Fairway Patio. Nobody else has any fining mechanism. The only thing that most of the HOAs that I'm aware of is put a lien on somebody's house for, I guess, somebody not picking up their dog's crap. I mean, I don't know. But again, if you don't, so if there's an animal loose that's the Polk County Sheriff's Office is the authority. The same way it is when if you see something weird in your neighborhood, don't call the traffic control center, call the police. Every time. Every single time.
Polk County has a leash law, just so you know. I know that because I'm a cyclist. So if your dog's in your yard and it gets out, you're still at fault.
Sure.
And if you're off of your property with your dog, they are supposed to be on a leash.
Right.
So if something does happen, you are liable for that dog if they are not on a leash.
Right. But the authority there is the Polk County Sheriff's Office.
Polk County Sheriff's Department.
The Animal Control Division. But yeah, that's a good question. And yes, sir.
New business. In the newsletter that we get community-wide, there was a phone number listed for you, which was listed as being 863-324-6174.
That is correct.
Right? About a month ago, I dialed that number. I was left on hold, not even answered, but just went to hold for over 20 minutes. Over 20 minutes. When there was finally a response, someone in rather broken English responded and asked if I wanted tea times.
Yeah,
Who do you think is going to call here looking for tea times and wait for 20 minutes to get a response from the pro shop?
There we have with our point of sale system, we have a reservation center, and we have tried to address those delays with the company. They, as well as everybody else, has gone their call center. I think he told me, and again, that's an excuse, and I don't really care about their excuse. Gone from 385 employees down to 22. So again, but that's where that's going to go. They're going to, when we can't answer it, that's where it's going to go. It's going to the reservation system. At least until the end of 2021 or whatever the contract runs out.
Then what?
Well, then we'll look at other options or the same option. But it does, it is we want people to book online, and we answer the phone most of the time, it rings all the time. It's just when we can't, when we're in front of a customer. I don't want people on the phone when there's customers in front of us.
The best thing to do when that happens is to call up or to hang up, because whoever's working in here is talking to somebody else.
Or a customer in front of
And
them,
then
yeah.
call back,
Yeah.
and then they'll answer it in here.
And how is somebody off the street, say, it wasn't me, but somebody else drove by here or heard about the place, wanting to book tea times, how are they gonna know to do that?
I figured it out.
Well, you're probably a road scholar.
That we can assure is not the case.
He might be. I've heard Tom call a
Thank
lot
you.
of things, but never a road scholar.
Not a road scholar, right? Yes, Mrs. Goodrich.
I addressed this to you
Yes, ma'am.
the other day about a golf cart going down the fairway, because I live on the third fairway, and the dog is just running ahead of him, and he was trying to attack the sandhill cranes. And then yesterday I saw a couple going down with a cart, like a little wagon, and they were going down the cart path, you know, walking their baby, and then the fishing on the golf course side. And what is it these people don't understand? This is a golf course. It's not a walking trail. It's not for dogs. I just don't understand it. They have no darn respect.
It's every
It's
time.
frustrating.
You know, I go out 2 or 3 evenings and ride around, and it's a minimum of 30 to 40 people that you have to remind of what the rules
Is there
are.
anything we can do with signs or have?
Signs don't
I
work.
think some signage.
You can't read.
Right on could help at those access.
And I'd be willing to. Bill and I have been speaking about that.
It's
The problem is that there are 350 million access points throughout the neighborhood, and you got to. And again, it's going to come down to the what we talked about with the what are we enforcing and how are we going to enforce it? What are we going to do if Sam just, you know, are we going to start finding our residents, the residents, if they are on the golf course unauthorized? Is that something? But again, that has to come from the individual HOA. So Palmacia would have to find somebody for being, and if there's a
I'm
lot
gonna
there. There's
suggest
a lot
that-
there. Yeah, I know, Chris. I see you shaking your head.
I'm going to suggest that all our cams, if anybody has a cam, that they write something to their residents in their HOAs.
That would be a good start.
Because, I mean, that's crazy.
It's in the highlights every month.
Yeah.
And those aren't those 19% aren't the ones out there.
No.
They're the ones that it's in my
Walking
yard.
late in the
Right.
evening, they think it's okay.
And it's
No, I get it.
ridiculous.
I get it. And
I think they're, and I don't mean to wrong, I think they're just ignorant, they think it's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
And it's
nobody-
not.
They think there's
I
nobody
mean,
out there.
that's crazy.
Unfortunately, they can go down there and go fishing behind a pine tree,
Yeah.
and we're driving down, we have no idea sometimes they're even down there.
right. No, sir, they don't.
But they need just some kind of sign on some of these points might help spread.
Okay.
That's
All right. Bill and I have been talking about that, haven't we, sign boy?
Here's your sign.
Give me money, I'll get her done.
Next
Okay.
year.
Yeah. Anything else?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
All right, we are adjourned. See you in June.
Praise God. Thank you.
I have a question for you.